Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, students. I hope all of you are doing good. I'm Ghazal Alias. Students, today we are going to start our Oxford Modern English Book 5. We'll start with a poem which is on page number 11 of your book. It's Unit 1, Chapter 2. The name of the poem is Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. This is on page number 11 of your book. This poem is written by an American poet, Robert Frost. Robert Frost, students, he loved nature, and his love for nature is clear and evident in his poetry. He was also a farmer and he was a teacher as well. Okay, students, this poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, is written in a very easy and simple language. One can easily understand the basic idea of the poem simply by reading it. Okay? First of all, I am going to read this poem for you and then I am going to explain the basic idea and the summary of the poem. Okay? Let's get started. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his trees, his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep. And miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Okay, students, as in this poem, in the first stanza, the poet is telling us that he was going somewhere on his horse or on his horse cart. While he was crossing a jungle, a forest, it was, it was winter season, and it was evening time. There was snowfall, and while the poet was crossing a forest, he stopped there and he started watching the trees filled up with snow. He loved that scenery. He loved the beauty of nature, and he started watching the falling snow on the woods or trees. Woods and trees are, students, same thing. Like trees are also called woods. So the poet, he's telling us that he stopped there and started, he was enjoying that beautiful scenery, and he was thinking about the owner of the forest, that the man who was the owner of the forest, he was in his home, and he did not the owner did not even know that the poet was standing in his forest and enjoying the falling snow on his woods. And then in the second stanza, the poet is telling us about his little horse, that his horse, he was really amazed. His pony or his horse was really amazed. Why was he amazed? Because the poet stopped at a place where there was no farmhouse, there was no shelter, and there was no place to stay there. So the horse, he started shaking his harness bells, the bells which were in his neck, which were hanging in his neck. He started shaking them as if the horse wanted to ask his master that why are you standing on a place where there is no farmhouse. But the poet, he was busy in enjoying the beauty of nature. He was busy in watching the woods filled up with snow. And his poet is also telling us that there was a frozen lake in the jungle, and the it was the darkest evening of the year, and there were some sweet sounds of wind and falling snowflakes, and the poet was enjoying all this. Then finally, the poet realized that he had to cover a long distance before going to sleep. Although he did want to stay longer, because according to the poet, the woods were dark and inviting, but he had to leave that place because he had to cover a long distance before going to sleep, or before sleeping he had to cover a long distance. He had made some promises which he had to fulfill. and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. In this sentence, this can the sleep can also be, you can also say that it's the poet is using the word sleep for death, that before death he had, the poet is trying to explain us that before death he had to do a lot of work, he had to cover a long distance, he had to fulfill so many promises before his death. So he's trying to explain us that sleep is another name of death. Okay, students, now this was the basic idea of the poem, and now I'm going to explain the poem in Urdu as well, so that the students who cannot understand English, they can understand the poem in Urdu as well. ओके स्टूडेंट्स, यहाँ पे आपको जो पोइट है वो एक सर्दियों का मौसम है और ये पुराने ज़माने की बात है। वो अपने हॉर्स कार्ट पे या हॉर्स पे कहीं जा रहा था और सर्दियों का मौसम था, स्नोफॉल हो रही थी और एक वो जंगल से गुजर रहा था। तो वहाँ पे उसने देखा जो ट्रीज़ थे दे वर फुल ऑफ स्नो, वो स्नो से भरे हुए थे। वो वहाँ पे खड़ा हो गया, उसको बहुत अच्छा लगा वो सीन, वो सीनरी को, नेचुरल ब्यूटी को एंजॉय करना शुरू हो गया। उसको बहुत खूबसूरत, उसका दिल नहीं चाह रहा था वहाँ से जाने को। वो वो शाम का टाइम था और बर्फ़ गिर रही थी। उसका जो हॉर्स है वो भी बहुत हैरान था, छोटा सा उसका हॉर्स था जिस पे वो सफ़र कर रहा था। वो हैरान था कि क्यों उसका मास्टर ऐसी जगह पे क्यों खड़ा हुआ है जहाँ पे बर्फ़ ही बर्फ़ है और जहाँ पे शाम का टाइम है और वहाँ पे कोई जगह, कोई फार्म हाउस नहीं है, कोई शेल्टर नहीं है, कोई छोटा इन वगैरह नहीं है जहाँ पे वो स्टे कर सकें। तो वो अपने मास्टर से पूछना चाहता है कि वो इस जगह पे क्यों खड़ा है कि जहाँ पे हर तरफ बर्फ़ ही बर्फ़ है। सो वो अपनी जो उसके जो हार्नेस बेल्स हैं, उसके गले में जो बेल्स हैं, वो उसको हिलाता है ताकि उसके मास्टर को पता चले उसने कोई मिस्टेक तो नहीं की यहाँ पे खड़े होकर। तो इस तरह वो राइटर पोइट जो है वहाँ कुछ देर खड़ा रहता है और वो इन्जॉय करता है उस सीनरी को। वो वहाँ से जाना नहीं चाहता, उसको बहुत मज़ा आ रहा होता है। लेकिन फिर फाइनली वो सोचता है कि नहीं, उसको बहुत दूर जाना है, उसको बहुत लंबा सफ़र तय करना है। अपने घर पहुँचने से पहले या सोने से पहले उसको बहुत लंबा सफ़र तय करना है। तो इसलिए वो वहाँ से निकल पड़ता है। ठीक है बेटा, आई होप आप लोगों को ये पोइम समझ आ गई होगी। थैंक यू जी।